Welcome back to the Bazaar. The new season is almost upon us, the cards have all been revealed, and it's time to talk about Mac's upcoming set. Before I get started though, a couple of prefaces. First, a shout out to relics for compiling these preview images, and of course a shout out to the original revealers, which are Crip and Snooey. I'll link to their videos down in the description. I would also like to preface by saying this is a mostly hype-driven first impressions video. I'm normally the optimization guy, that's what I do, but this game is stupidly complicated and incredibly high variance. They are not universally true statements about the power of items. So without having played with these, I can't tell you what context they're good or bad in. They're also massively subject to change, right? Their support packages might get nerfed when they release. They might be reworked between now and release. There's just no way to know, especially with only having seen their lowest tier version and not their enchant timings or their upgrade paths, exactly how this is going to work. Now, getting right into the first card, the blank slate is a medium relic, a 7-second cast time to do nothing, and introducing a new quest mechanic that immediately shows off exactly what I'm saying when this is hype-driven first impressions and I cannot know how good the card is. The way a quest works is quest items have these additional lines beneath the card. These lines show a goal, gain regen 50 times in this case, a use case, 0 out of 50, and that's how many times you've gained regen while this was either on your board or in your stash. If there has been official depth clarification, I don't know. There's the tiniest chance this tracks before you buy the items. I assume it doesn't. But the important thing here is that it does track from stash. You don't have to be playing these items that, in this case, literally do nothing. And then once you unlock them and get it to 50 out of 50, in this case, you will gain regen on the item. These other ones give you a poison effect, a burn effect, a slow effect, and a freeze effect. And for other items that we'll talk about later, I am told that this will track the base value of the item. Say you have a burn item that unlocks a poison effect. If it was burn 3, it will be poison 3. If you've upgraded the burn to burn 7, it will still be poison 3. It does not track the updated value, just the base value. In the case of an item that says do nothing, I don't know what the values will be on this card, right? I can see there are quests to regen, poison, burn, slow, and freeze 50 times. And frankly, all of those sound very doable individually. Maybe doing all of them will be quite hard. However, I don't know if the item's good or not because I don't know what the base values are. I don't know what it upgrades to. I have no idea what it tracks when you enchant it. I have no idea what this card does. Ideally, it's on a board with at least 6 other relic or quest items that has a 1-second cooldown, so it's going to be incredibly good. You put it next to a pendulum, you go to the moon immediately, right? Having a 2-slot item and 6 other relics and a pendulum, probably impossible. That specific example is not going to work. But it's a very fast item that does a lot. There's no way that if you're able to reliably do these quests, blank slate is a bad item. The question is, how long does this take? How many times do you actually regen or poison in a fight, right? There are certainly some builds where you do like constant regening, right? You could run like a Quillback with this on board, probably knock out regen 50 times in a single fight. Alternatively, if you're just using like a Quill and Ink and a Venomander, this is going to take you like 8 or 9 fights. It's going to take you a long time to do this. And again, with poison and burn effects, a lot of Mac builds for burn, they don't do 50 burns very quickly. They calcinator you, fire claw you maybe twice, 4 burns a fight tops, which would be over 10 fights. So this probably entails that you're going to be playing around this pretty heavily to actually unlock the things you want. And worth noting, maybe you don't want them all, right? Maybe you only care about freeze. Maybe that's the only one you're actually trying to unlock and the rest of it doesn't matter. But I think blank slate is going to be a good item. I just cannot possibly hazard a guess as to how good it will actually be. And let's start getting into some other quest mechanics. We're going to cover all the quest cards first. Let's move right on to Soulstone. It's a small relic, 7 seconds, gain a 3 regen for the fight, which is obviously not very good for a base silver tier item. I forgot to say it. Blank slate is a base bronze tier item. And I think every single quest item is either base bronze or silver, and I think most are base bronze. And that's good because you need a lot of time to deal with these and actually do the quest. Blank slate actually has by far the easiest quest, just needing you to do stuff a lot in combat. Most of the quests are like what we're seeing here on Soulstone. Buy 15 poison items or buy 15 burn items, same for slow or freeze. Now the way Soulstone works is that you have to pick one, right? You either unlock the poison or unlock the burn, you either unlock the slow or unlock the freeze. And we've been told the values track the base, so 3 poison or 3 burn, sure. Does it track the base for 3 slow or 3 freeze? Maybe it's slow 1 for 3 or freeze 1 for 1.5 and it's halved. But this is going to scale with tier, right? Even assuming worst case scenario, that's 3, 4, 5 and a 2.5 second freeze, right? So again, we don't really know how these things scale. We won't until the patch goes live and we get data mining from stuff like Bazaar. But a 7-second item that has built-in regen, that has built-in freeze, that has built-in burn, that is a small relic for the purpose of synergies we'll be talking about later, this is probably playable. The major issue with it is how do you go about buying these items? And it's here that I want to really talk about my trepidations with the quest mechanic, because I'm kind of worried that Mac is literally the worst character to receive this mechanic. At least in its current state, with how many different items you need to buy for most of the quest. Because let's be clear, you're not buying 15 of any type of item in most runs. I have had runs where I won playing Mac with freeze items, multiple runs. And I think in both of those runs combined that have been uploaded to the channel, I bought less than 15 freeze items total. This is not something you passively do while assembling a freeze build. And there are a lot of quests and there are synergies between the quest items. The way you will be unlocking these is by burning gold, buying items, and selling them straight back just because they have relevant text. Also, as a baseline, these items are not good without the quest completed. That's their intentional design, but gain 3 regen every 7 seconds is a bad item, meaning that you need to put these in your stash, which is where you keep your economy items, and then spend all your money wasting money to make these better later. If you watch the Mac video I uploaded today, yesterday, sometime recently, you'll see that my stash was filled the entire game. I never had any room for anything. That's how Mac plays. He has a very filled stash, especially if you're trying to pivot between builds and max your economy at the same time. As far as I can tell, the only way to reasonably complete these quests is to either put your economy items or your quest items on your board to make stash room and have a much weaker build today in most cases, or to give up some of your economy items, which like you're gonna need those, right? Because this is really expensive. I've never had a game where I thought I could afford to buy and sell 10 extra items and my economy would be completely fine. Maybe on like day 14, but usually before day 10, I'm not floating a ton of extra gold. So I look at this and I see like these numbers are really, really high. You basically have to do the quest early, right? If you try to do the quest late, when they're selling gold and diamond items and you're never seeing bronze items, this shit's not happening, right? These are items where you have to find them early. And you probably need to accept that you're losing the first couple of days of fights, right? That your win rate between days 0 and 5 are going to be bad while you're unlocking these, because you just need to put them on your board and have a weak build to try to unlock them. They're going to need to scale up to be crazy late by doing the quest. And largely, I think how good all of these items are will come down to how good of a win rate can you get while actually unlocking these quests. Because these numbers seem high to me and the stash space seems incredibly limited. We have the Eternal Torch, a medium relic, 5-second burn 2. When you burn, this gains 2 burn from the fight as its locked effect, which you get by buying 10 burn items. And if you scale it up after that point to have 100 plus burn on this, I say after that point, you could theoretically do it first, I just don't know how you'd ever manage that. But if you get it to have 100 plus burn, it gains multi-strike. And I assume that this just scales exactly how you would expect, 2, 4, 6, 8. I don't know if this text is scaled by level. I thought it would be, and then I thought it would be broken. And then I thought it would be awful if it didn't scale that way. I don't know how this works. If it is 2, 4, 6, 8 scaling on the quest unlock, it's not that hard to do this, and it's a very strong item. If it isn't, I don't know how good it is. And every single thing I just said about Eternal Torch applies verbatim to Idol of Decay because it's the exact same item but for poison. Usually if you compare identical burn and poison cards, poison is way worse. Bypassing shield is obviously better than getting halved by shield, but in the real world of the game, usually that's not a big deal. What is often a much, much bigger deal is that burn ticks twice as fast. However, I would say Idol of Decay actually works a lot better with Max Kit than the Eternal Torch does. Max doesn't really have any multicast or super fast burn items, now that I think of it. But in terms of poisoning, the self-poison archetype poisons itself and the opponent simultaneously all the time on adjacent activations. It does it non-stop. You're going to scale this very quickly. On top of that, stuff like the Quillback does constant passive poison triggers, just like those adjacency effects. And depending on what you're fighting, I could see you just immediately getting this to 100 poison pretty consistently as soon as you unlock this first effect. So I think Idol of Decay might, even though it looks like the worst item because it's not a burn item, it's a poison item, might actually be generally better because it has a much better synergy with Mac and is also much easier to stack during the fight. And again, how strong either of these are depends on what this text says. If it's when you poison, this gains 8 poison, boy howdy, that's going to poison a lot when it multicasts in a self-poison build. But it might not say that. It really depends on how these things scale with level, and we don't know that yet. We also have one more item in this series of cards, the Life Conduit. It is the regen equivalent, the defensive one. And I think this might be the strongest one, because Mac has ways to scale regen effectively in combat, leverage it as damage, notably Soul Ring. You probably don't want to be using a 2-slot non-weapon item to build regen with a Moose Staff during combat. But Life Conduit is a very fast 5-second speed multicast scaling source of regen. And again, there are a lot of fast ways of creating regen, not quite as many as there are with poison, but I think this is going to be a very strong defensive item if you can get it enabled. Maybe I'm overestimating it, but I see 5-speed gain regen with multicast, scaling values over the course of the fight. I don't think this is going to scale up to be like the value of an endgame piece rot, but if it scales this with Diamond Tier, maybe it does. This is a very, very strong way of generating just huge amounts of regen, right? If you can do the quest. Thankfully, buying regen items in Mac is not that hard. He has a ton of them. It's just a question of the economy. For all 3 of these items, you only need to buy 10 of a given item, and you probably aren't running all 3 of them, and these items are directly part of your game plan to win the fights. I don't think these quests are this bad. I think Soulstone is much, much harder to manage because it's a larger number of items, and it doesn't strike me as being obviously easy to do. I think usually if you run Soulstone, it might be a situation where you just want a small relic, or you found it while you were already working on a quest for something else. I think this is by far the hardest individually looking at it to complete. In my opinion, on Soulstone does get better, realizing that, oh, you're probably trying to complete these quests simultaneously. Maybe the gameplay pattern is actually that you buy an Eternal Torch and just throw it in your stash and don't worry about it. You wait to find other items to scale up with it at the same time, like the Soulstone. That makes a lot of sense. Next up, we have the Sands of Time, a medium relic, 8-second cast time, slow 1 item for 1 second, and its locked quest effect is when you use another relic, charge this 1 second. And to unlock that, you'll need to buy 10 slow items. You also can give it multicast by buying 20 relics. That sounds like it's going to take quite a while, like most of the run to accomplish, which is probably for the best, because I feel like this threatens to become infinite in the late game, and you don't want infinite combos happening too fast. We'll talk about why shortly. So again, how does this upgrade, right? Does it slow 1 for 4? Because if so, that's not exceptional at all. It's really slow 2 for 4 with the multicast and it's charging, so it's a lot better than 1 for 4 would usually be, like miles better. It still would not be a bad item if it did that, but if it's slow 4 for 1, suddenly it's got a huge amount of overlap with the Femur build. It's got insane synergy with any curio, and this is a bronze item you're upgrading all game basically, so you will see curios with this. I think Sands of Time, depending on how it upgrades, could be absolutely fantastic. And a big part of that is being a multicasting relic that charges off of other relics, and it has a twin brother, the Frost Totem. This is the exact same card, but for freeze, so obviously it's better than the slow version. And again, we don't know if it will be freeze 1 for 4 or 4 for 1. I'm inclined to think it's the latter. That's generally how max items scale. It's more likely other characters to scale up the base duration as opposed to the number of targets. Also, freeze 1 for 4 multicast 2 is completely fucked up, so that's another reason I think it's going to work this way. And if you manage to get both of them, which you would like to, right? Because they're both bronze items, they both want you to buy 20 relics, 2 for the price of 1. It's just the thing you would want to do. But there goes 4 slots of either board power that's just terrible now, or there goes 4 slots of your stash that you could use to generate economy, right? That's the whole thing where I got a lot of trepidation with how this will actually play in a game when I'm trying to make it happen. I did intuitively think that you would want both of them together just because they have the same quest and they charge each other. But very genuinely, I'm not sure it's that big of a deal, because freeze and slow has some pretty obvious anti-synergy. Anything that's frozen, effectively you wasted the slow. And then on top of that, it's nowhere near an infinite, right? They essentially just get each other down to 6-second cooldowns. And even if you did run enough relics, it would never be a good infinite. You would need to trigger 7 uses of this to charge for 7 seconds over the course of 1.4 seconds to trigger it. Because when you use another relic, charge this 1 second with an 8-second cooldown is actually a very slow infinite. And like, obviously you can make it an infinite with extra steps, right? You throw in a diamond library, a diamond pendulum, bing, bang, boom, it's an infinite. They both go off every second internal cooldown. And that is just a true infinite because they both have multicast. And while that's awesome, and you can bet I'm going to be trying to do that sort of combo, it has a 6-second startup time with diamond library. And I mean, who can't make an infinite combo with a diamond pendulum and a diamond library? That is the guide to how to make easy infinites, right? Coming back to Sands of Time, I think this card is obviously fine. It's not exceptional, but if you need to trigger relics for the purposes of synergies, which we'll talk about more in just a second, then this can be good. But it's also a slow item for the purposes of Magnus's Femur, and that is also pretty good because Magnus's Femur itself is a relic, and I don't know if there are any other relics in that build, but it does help a little bit. Of the two, I definitely think Frost Totem is by far the scarier. Mac has a lot of freeze items. Adding another freeze item to the list can help him hit a critical mass where he's able to completely shut out builds. And speaking of relics that freeze, wouldn't you know it, Soulstone could be one of them. Now, having talked about all but one of the quest items, it's time to talk about the capstone of quest items, the Tomb of the Ancients. It is a large relic property. It has 7-second cast time, and it gains 5 regen for the fight. It gets +1 multicast for each other relic you have. So that is a huge multicasting relic that has some pretty direct synergy with the Frost Totem. However, it is again a 7-second cast time. It's quite slow to start up. And its quest is to complete other quests on other items. You basically have to find this early to use it at all. There's no avoiding that. Complete 2 quests on other items gives you a poison effect, presumably poison 5. Not terrible, but this looks like a pretty dedicated stall card, so it builds in a way to win the fight on the item, which is greatly appreciated. The real thing you care about here is complete 4 quests on other items, which unlocks a freeze effect with multicast equal to the number of relics you have. And if it scales to base 5, I don't know what that means. It better not freeze 5 for 1 or 1 for 5 on multicast. We just really don't know what the quest actually do yet. I don't even know how to speculate on Tomb of the Ancients. It is a potentially 6 multicast freeze item that might never even be playable, right? I haven't the faintest clue. I assume if this is on your opponent's board and it actually freezes your items even once you deserve to lose, they earned it. I've got no fucking idea what to expect from this, man. But I will say, having talked about all of these items, 7-second starts, 8-second starts, the more generic ones here with 5-second starts are much more playable in any build, but these are quite slow. It's to the point of being problematic. There's an item to fix this, and it is a fantastic item that is probably going to be the linchpin of any viable relic strategy, the excavation tools. It is a small tool with a 6-second cast time, charge an adjacent relic 1 second. If you have a quest item, reduce this item's cooldown by 50%. So it's a 3-second charge adjacent relic items, which is crazy. We don't know how it scales yet. It could go down from 6 to 5 to 4 to 3. It could charge an adjacent relic from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. Don't know which. I'm of the impression that excavation tools being this fast and accelerating your other items is probably going to make it one of the most important part of any builds that we're using with like Tomb of the Ancients or Frost Totem or Sands of Time. I'm fairly certain that in any build featuring any of these quests where the quest is how you're winning, excavation tools will quietly be one of the best items on your board. Not just for accelerating your game plan, but for massively reducing your startup time. This is instrumental and hugely important. The fact that it's a small item also makes it much easier to find since Mac is constantly transmuting small items as well. Which leaves us with one last item that's largely existing outside of all this stuff, the Macroscope. It's a small tool, 7-second cast time, and it slows one item for 1 second. If you have another relic quest or enchanted item, this has +1 multicast for each. So this could pretty easily be like a 1-slot, 7-second, slow one item for 1 second with 5 multicast. That doesn't even sound that hard. Which is absolutely ridiculous with a Magnus's Femur, right? Again, we don't know how this scales. I assume it's going to basically be tier adjusted instance. It's going to be slow 3 items for 1 second with a shitload of multicast. That's potentially so incredibly strong they don't do it that way and it scales this duration instead. Just because if someone has a Magnus's Femur and at 7 seconds they slow like 21 items, you're gonna fucking die. Like that doesn't seem okay. So again, this is a solid enough synergy piece for a Magnus's Femur because baseline, the Femur itself being a relic, this will be multicast too. And you also would probably want Sands of Time in that build, right? It's a relic, you get a multicast, it's charged by other relics. Unfortunately, the Macroscope itself, not a relic, so that synergy doesn't exist, ignore me. But there is direct synergy for at least giving this the additional multicast by having both on the board. I think Macroscope's going to be a good part of Magnus Femur builds, but outside of that, probably unplayable, which is unsurprising. That's just the home you expect slow items to have in Mac. So how do I feel about Mac's expansion on the whole? I'm sort of of 2 minds. First, like just point blank, not as hyped as I am on Dooley, not as hyped about these cards in general. They don't really excite me in quite the same way. And most of that comes down to trepidation with the quest mechanic and might be alleviated immediately, and I immediately fall in love with the cards once I actually start playing with them. But the second way about the cards I feel, I genuinely don't think they look that strong unless the freeze durations are fucked and they immediately get patched as they're completely broken, right? I genuinely think they're probably not that busted because the quests look really, really hard to do. But in a previous video, someone made the comment, the Bazaar is repatched and rebalanced so often that you really shouldn't care too much if a card preview looks broken or if it looks weak. You should care if the design looks interesting. And that dude was completely right, and has changed the way I view card reveals at all. The quest mechanic is incredibly interesting. If the numbers need tuning, the numbers will get tuned. I think these cards are really interesting as a design for the game. Even though they only exist for Mac right now, I have no reason not to think that we won't see more quest expansions down the line. Maybe not one every month, but eventually I expect we'll see quests for every character. If the devs are somewhere on record saying we're only doing quests one time for Mac, I don't really know why that would be a thing. And honestly, I would expect them to change their minds. But I think the quest design is genuinely interesting. I think a super fast item that does everything is really cool. I think the optimization of figuring out how to do all these quests simultaneously without killing your economy and your board power is interesting. I think trying to make infinite lockout strategies with Tomb of the Ancients and Frost Totem is interesting. I think the top end on Macroscope is much less interesting, right? Like, oh, it's a good item in a Magnus's Femur build. That doesn't make the Bazaar a crazy place. That makes Femur hit harder, right? I think all of this other stuff is actually much more interesting than what's in Dooley's expansion. And once everything is roughly evenly balanced, which is the goal of ongoing game design, is that things should be balanced. Over the course of the long term, I will probably fall in love with the set a lot more than I will Dooley's set. In the super long term, I expect to complain all the time about these useless fucking dinosaurs I keep finding on Dooley, and I'm going to be really sad in runs where I don't get to enable quest. But for now, my biggest feeling going into the expansion is I really, really hope that these quests are much more easy to complete than I feel like they are. I look at complete 4 quests on other items after finding the Tomb of the Ancients. I'm like, shit, can you even do that? Because on the one hand, with stuff like Soulstone, I saw someone mention, like, you got to be careful if you want the burn one, not to accidentally unlock the poison one. No, you don't. You've never bought 15 poison items by accident in a non-poison build before. What the fuck are you talking about? But on the other hand, if I am playing with Eternal Torch and I want to use Tomb of the Ancients down the line, I'm going to be buying burn items to enable this thing. And if I get to like 6 burn items on this and don't have Tomb of the Ancients, I might want to slow down. And I might find 4 more upgrades for my burn build and genuinely mess up and accidentally complete this quest. And maybe that's not how it works, right? Maybe this is not when you complete the quest, but having completed quest in your inventory, and it's just typed differently. I don't know. Maybe it'll be changed to be exactly what I just said, but it feels to me like you need the stars to align to do this. And I want it to be doable. I want to see this actually be a playable archetype. I want to see crazy freeze lockout Tomb of the Ancients builds. And I don't know how possible they are right now. So in terms of power level, not that hyped. In terms of design, absolutely love the expansion for Mac. Also, as always in these sorts of videos, I forgot to do a call to action. If you want more Daily Bazaar content just like this, then feel free to sub to the channel. And if you could leave a like on your way out, it really does boost the video up in the algorithm, help it get more views, help the channel grow, and I really do appreciate it. Anyways, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.